Hi everyone, Greg Martin, the Entrepreneur's Banker here, and this week on Selling Your Business 360, a full circle view of your exit, we're going to talk with the first of many supporters for entrepreneurs that are looking to exit. Nathan Teinert is the founder and the lead broker at Graystone International, a mergers and acquisitions firm headquartered out of Lagrange, Texas. And just the amount of value and wisdom that Nathan brings in this discussion is going to be so impactful to you, because I know it's impactful to me. I can't wait to unpack this with you.
Well, welcome back. I'm so excited for this episode of Selling Your Business 360, where we're trying to focus and help entrepreneurs that are looking to sell their business sometime in the future to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like in a holistic approach. I think today's conversation is going to be one of the best that we've had, because we've got a really unique guest. So Nathan Teinert is CEO of Graystone International. It's a boutique merger and acquisitions firm. And the thing that I'm most impressed in, and I think that Nathan brings the most value, is that obviously a lot of brokers have been in the business and they've helped a lot of clients. Nathan has grown a lot of businesses from zero and sold them, and continues to have active roles in multiple businesses across a lot of different industries. And so he understands what it's like to not only run a business and face the challenges of COVID and the economy since then, but then also to always have a mind and always understand that this business is going to be exited at some point. And he uses his information, he uses his experience, his passion to specifically help entrepreneurs along the journey. So Nathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I know that we have talked on a couple of other podcasts that we've done, and so it's a lot of value that you bring. But let's just jump right into it. So Graystone International is a mergers and acquisitions firm that you advise. So do you advise on the buy side, sell side, both?
Both, right? So our passion is acquisition entrepreneurship. So, primarily 90% of our business is representing sellers. So it's those individuals that are looking to retire or exit and pursue a new profession. We're helping those people exit the business, get the highest valuation they can, and do it successfully. It's a long, arduous journey. We've talked about that before. Our job is to make that as smooth as possible and make sure they exit. So, but the other side is we do represent kind of exclusively a few buyers, typically the repeat buyers that are looking to kind of build a conglomerate. And so our in-house marketing team will go out and find off-market listings and help them, get those under contract. What we've seen too is a lot of businesses, a lot of business owners get put in a position where they have to sell, and they, it's health concerns or age or whatever that may be. They need a valuation of X, and that's what's in their mind, but then the numbers don't quite add up to that. And so we also offer consulting. Typically it's 6 to 12 months of consulting to help position that company to get to that valuation that they need it to be at, and then we'll go ahead and list it and get it done.
Okay, so that's a really critical component of all this. So talk to me about the ideal timeline of when someone is thinking of selling. Is 10 years too far out? Is 10 weeks too close?
Yeah, it's never too early in my mind, right? Like I started entrepreneurship with startups, and so it was always about innovative ideas and growth, marketing, and everything that goes into it. And literally 100% of business owners are that way. We know that. So we neglect the idea of what is the exit plan. And it's very easy to push that off until it's too late. And we see it all the time. And so, if you can plan your exit, it needs to be a few years ahead of time. Typically 3 to 4 years ahead of time. One thing that we always ask for with our clients is a 3-year financial statement, balance sheets, and cash flow statements, stuff like that. But it's over a 3-year period. What that allows us to do is see a trend. And over that 3-year period, they're also able to put those systems in place that make it more lucrative. You can sell in a higher multiple by having those systems in place. Okay. So, about 36 months before you're looking to exit and step out of the game, start talking to your professionals, the attorney, the CPA, a knowledgeable broker, and start pushing in that direction and narrowing it down and getting everything planned.
So we talked a little bit before we started recording. There are different buyers out there for businesses.
Yeah.
You might have a financial buyer where maybe you're a partner already and you're just buying the other half, or you're buying into a practice. You've got a strategic buyer that is looking to expand geographically, or for some reason they're able to duplicate the operations or the administrative support. And then you've got venture money or private equity money. As from a broker's perspective, how do you advise clients differently based upon who they want to sell to?
Yeah, so Greg, we've talked before, multiple conversations about the emotional state of selling. And that's probably the biggest situation here, is understanding the buyer, because the buyer will dictate what this process is going to be like. These private equity groups and family offices and VC groups, it's not their first rodeo, right? And so they've done this before, and they know how to kind of caress the process. And it's in their best interest to close the deal and get those funds injected into a good business so that it can provide an ROI to the investors. When you start getting smaller shops and smaller capital groups or an individual investor, it's very emotional to them. There's a lot of fear and a lot of risk that comes into play. And each of those situations you have to handle differently. And so that's a big reason why in our industry, unlike real estate, you have an agent on both sides. Typically there's one broker that facilitates to the intermediary in this group. We always represent our client, but we have to make sure that the other party wins as well. Everybody has to win, and then indirectly we win as brokers at the end. But both sides must win. And so depending on the buyer will really dictate the approach that we take. Private equity is the larger the deal, the easier it is.
Gotcha.
Believe it or not.
So and that makes sense, because I think that the larger the deal, the higher probability that they're going to have professional financials. They're going to be really clean, very transparent. When you're asking for customer lists so that they can understand concentration, when you're asking for supplier lists so they can see overlap, all that's
typically
readily available.
Typically,
and that's not to say that the smaller entrepreneurs don't have valuable companies. It's just a matter of they may not have the system and the structure, which is what I heard you said in your consulting, that you kind of help put that in. So let's dive into that a little bit.
So a big part of that, Greg, is these smaller companies, what we see a lot is it's very dependent on the owner. So it'll be personal relationships. The cash flow is directly related to the owner. Mm-hmm. And so and imagine the liability with that. You're going to drop, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million on a company, but 60 or 70% of that revenue is tied to good friends of theirs that they developed over a decade or two. Yeah. And that's where a lot of fear starts coming in. You're using your money typically, not other people's money. And so then what precautionary steps do you put in place contractually to protect you? The seller doesn't like those as well, right? So it creates some conflict. There's a lot of hurdles to jump through that process. The larger companies typically have those SOPs in place that we talk about where it's not based on the relationships as much. There's always some,
right?
And that's, everybody understands that, but you have general managers, you have presidents of the company, you have VPs, you have all of these people, HR, all these people that reduce the risk. It's layers of protection and security for that buyer.
So let's talk about some of those solutions to the hurdles. I think that when talking with other entrepreneurs and with other advisors, things such as an earnout, maybe kind of helps make sure that everyone's vested, maybe a seller finance note, stuff like that. What are some other solutions that you found to having maybe a little bit too much dependence upon the current ownership? Yeah,
so earnouts are a great structure for that. I had a phone call this morning with a seller, and it's a very healthy company, but they're very involved. And immediately we don't have a contract or anything in place, and I said, this is what you should expect. This will not be a full cash deal. And you should expect either an earnout, some potential seller note, potentially, or an escrowed holdback. And that's what we see a lot.
Okay,
And
so let's, we
so-
haven't talked much about that. So
yeah,
what's that?
So a holdback will typically be 12 months. And so let's say there's an asking price of $5 million on the business. Typically what we'll see is about 70 to 80% of that is cash down or upfront. And then upon no indemnification or contract loss or customers leaving or anything like that, or whatever they determine in the contract, at the end of that 12-month period, that's held in a third-party escrow account, the seller would receive that. And so that holdback is the cleanest way of doing it. It's held in a third party. The contract defines exactly what
What it takes to get that money out of jail?
Yes, yeah, who gets it, how they get it, when they get it. And that is so important. And so when you start doing earnouts, it can get fuzzy. It can really get fuzzy. And so the holdback is a very clean way of doing it. It says, hey, like, you know, everything you've told us is true. And there's nothing hiding here. So I like holdbacks. I think they're fair.
So does that structure also apply for maybe some operational liability that's out there? Because some businesses, like if you're in construction, or I mean, just about any business has some operational liability. Yeah. How do you walk entrepreneurs through the reality of that this is a risk that can decrease your value, and how do you protect the entrepreneur and protect the cash that they get? How do we work through that? I mean, is it just like, well, that's a risk out there, your price is down?
Yeah.
Or how do you negotiate that?
Why are you leaving, right? Why are you selling?
Yeah.
Is it health concerns? Do we have time to fix that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of considerations to that. But if we have time, we can put systems in place. We can put those layers in place. So, you know, having regional managers. Let's say you have a business that covers a lot of different areas, but all of those GMs in those locations call you. Let's condense that down and bring on a regional manager that is being compensated for growth as well as performance of those general managers in those areas. So it's not always an added expense. We can actually leverage that to also produce additional revenue and growth, probably increase profitability and efficiency, but that reduces that level of risk associated with the owner and some person, that general manager in that location. That's probably the most recent experience we have as far as implementing a system. It was a nationwide company. They're primarily on the East Coast, but they're in many states. And there was a message, text message every afternoon at 5:30 that came to the owner from all of these general managers.
How many did they have, like 20, 30?
No, I'm talking about like 100.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 100. There were 600 employees in this company. And
I think that's the definition of a bottleneck.
Yes. And so I said, look, buddy, this has to change. And so we quickly were able to implement that. We actually saw the growth increase substantially, but it also reduced a large amount of risk. And it actually got so healthy, the seller no longer wanted to sell because there was so much stress reduction for him.
Right. And that's what I've heard over and over throughout these conversations, is that's a very likely outcome as someone's going through this transition or thinking about it, or maybe it's a pivot that they start to kind of put these systems in place, and maybe one or two employees really rises to the top.
Yeah.
And then it's, okay, well, I no longer want to sell to a strategic buyer.
Yeah.
It's not all about the money. Maybe I can speak in and create legacy.
Yeah.
Maybe give me an example, or
man.
how have you helped walk people to be like, come to you and be like, hey, I know you're
Greg,
helping us sell, but we don't want to.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time. It's typically sellers come to us and they're burnt out. Whether they're ready for retirement or the stress of
Something
employees
new.
or ready for something new, just a change or a new marriage, or there's typically a reason. And so a lot of it's stress, though, a lot of stress. And so they'll come to us and say, hey, look, I need to spend more time with my kids. Or, I've neglected my family. It's time for me to spend time with my family. I said, okay. we're going to take this serious. So like once we sign the contract, we're going after this. You've got a full team here at Graystone to really support you. We're going to make this happen, and buyers will come your way. And you have to be prepared to close. And as we get through the process, though, there's always that moment where saying, if they could do it, why can't I?
And I'm having fun again.
Yeah. Well, things are easier now, right? Like, Nathan believes in me. It's like, well, a lot of people believed in you. It's just entrepreneurship gets lonely at times. Yeah. And that's what leads a lot of people to wanting to sell prematurely or any of that. So, we always take a no pressure approach. It's, once we sign a contract, we're going to sell. But before that, we have a sit down with every business owner and we say, hey, why are you selling? Are you sure we can't fix this right now? If it's stress related, what can we do to fix that right now? Right. As an entrepreneur at heart, I mean, it's what we owe fellow entrepreneurs is what is best for you, what's best for your family and your employees and everything.
And that's what I love about entrepreneurship that I've observed probably over the last 10 years. I call it the Shark Tank effect. And I think Shark Tank has done great things for entrepreneurs in the world. But to me, one of the most powerful things is that you realize that it's not a zero-sum game. Yeah. That entrepreneurs out there, by and large, are open-handed with their advice and their knowledge, and they want to share. They want to see everyone succeed. Now, obviously, if I'm a car dealer, A is not going to give all the secret sauce to car dealer B, yeah. But they can empathize, yeah. Because they know that it's lonely at times.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about cash. Let's talk a little bit about money, the value of a corporation. And you've represented and you've sold service companies, product companies across the board. I'm sure that you've even helped with some internet e-commerce type companies. Mm-hmm. And how each one of I get it. Based on the industry, based on the trends, based on the outlook, the multiples that you're going to get as an entrepreneur is going to vary. But in your experience, how are companies valued? How do you come to the number to say, okay, this thing's worth $7.2 million?
The way I do it?
Yeah.
Because the way I do it, I think, is a little different than the way a lot of other brokers do it. Typically, a broker will run an appraisal on a business. They're going to look at the cash flow or that adjusted EBITDA number. They're going to look at recently sold businesses. There's actually resources for that. Also listed businesses. And so you can pull comps on businesses, believe it or not. That's
definitely a professional. That's like, don't stop, your lawn mowing business to try to go find that. That's the power of a broker.
Yeah, and so but there's those resources that we have found, and there's a lot of professionals that we can reach out to, investment firms and stuff like that have industry-specific knowledge, and they can speak on what they have seen. And so those are some great resources we have, and a lot of brokers have worked on developing those. But we don't like to stop there, right? Like a few of the things we talked about earlier is the dependency on the owner, right? Like that will fluctuate what the valuation is. What is the market share of the business? How well is that industry doing? Are there any political changes that may affect that business coming up? Are tax rates going up? I mean, there are so many things that can adjust the valuation of a company. I mean, we could talk all day about that. Keeping it basic, adjusted EBITDA, or cash flow, or seller's discretionary earnings, any of those numbers will work. And so at this point, after doing so many evaluations, I know a basic multiple for pretty much every business. I can apply one. So whether it's a 2 multiple on something that is not very fruitful, or we're talking about a 15 multiple.
Same industry, same thing.
Exactly, it can happen.
I have a better system.
A better system, greater cash flow, less risk for that investment firm. All of those things play into it. So, we come up with a multiple, but then we start looking. One of the big things for me is what type of procedures are in place that will make this transition easy, will reduce risk. That creates how desirable that acquisition is, but then also market share. I like market share a lot. There's a HVAC company in Austin that we've been talking about, or talking with for a while, and they own about 20% of the commercial HVAC Austin market.
Wow.
That's huge. Yeah. That's substantial, and for that reason, they get a massive multiple, and a lot of companies want them. They know that it's not about to cool down in Texas anytime soon. It's going to be hot.
Yeah.
AC systems continue to evolve and need to be replaced and need service. And this is a company that's 45 years old, and they're well known. They have massive contracts with the city, and the owners are very uninvolved. Very uninvolved.
Wow.
And so it's a fantastic opportunity, and we're applying a large multiple.
So then the question is, why do you want to sell? I mean, if you're putting
retirement,
3 hours
retirement,
of work,
retirement. Yeah. So these guys are pushing 80 years old.
Things
so
are great, but I want to just.
Yeah.
I don't want that 4 hours a month. I want back.
Yeah, they're pushing 80. So the buyout sounds a little better at this point. And even with a lack of involvement, there's still always stress and liability associated with running a business. Right. When you, especially at that level, they have 500, 600 employees.
600 families that they care
that's
for.
600
that's
families
600 Christmases
that look
that they're responsible for.
That's exactly right, Greg. That's exactly right. So it's time for them to exit. They've built an incredible business, and they will do very, very, very well because of it.
How would you describe the emotional roller coaster that selling a business is? And I want you to put yourself in maybe your very first sale. That company that you started when you were in college, when you sold it the first time. What was that roller coaster like?
Oh my. It was intimidating. I did not know the process. I felt like I put everything I've worked for in someone else's hands. And that was very scary.
Did you have a broker?
I did.
Okay.
I did, yeah. And they were very comforting, and I felt like they knew what they were doing. To be honest with you, I tried pulling out multiple times. I started learning things financially about my company, and I learned about these systems I could put in place, and I did put in place through the process. And I started asking myself, why am I selling? I was young, I was a young guy. I was in college, and so why am I selling? I can enjoy the cash flow for a long time, but I knew it was something that I needed to exit to get to my next step in life. So yeah, it is a roller coaster, and it's still a roller coaster. That was a big part of Ready to Exit. Writing the book is we touch on the process of selling in a lot of different ways, but we talk a lot about the emotional toll it takes, and at certain times you will feel certain things. And so, it's a roller coaster. We always make it very clear at the beginning. We say, you will cry. And you've heard me in speaking events before, like, you will cry. I don't care how bad you are, you're going to cry. It's going to emotionally affect you. And no matter how bad you want out, no matter how much money's on the line, it's going to affect you emotionally. And, but it's also been so rewarding for me to see people retire or exit a stressful situation or move forward with something else in their life that they desperately want.
Yeah,
it's something bigger and better for them, something that they enjoy more. And so the emotional process is something we have to be very careful with. We try to be very clear with our clients on as well, as this is going to happen. And we do that up front so that when we get to that due diligence process or signing an APA or whatever that is, and there's that hesitation, we say, hey, Mr. Seller, we talked about this. We told you would feel this way. This isn't abnormal.
Go back to why you're doing this.
Yes.
And what this will mean for you post-closing.
Exactly. Right. Remember your why. Remember why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So throughout this entire conversation, just knowing you, every broker, I think, approaches things a little bit differently. I've heard consistently from you over and over your systems. Mm-hmm. You can get more freedom. You can enjoy your company more. You can get a higher multiple with systems. What's maybe the big systems that when you go to, is it strictly financial? Is it strictly a sales system? Is it strictly managerial? I mean, I know it's all of them, but
yeah. A few key things that I look for is making sure that we're showing year-over-year profits, or increased revenue, or increased profits. Nobody wants to buy a stagnant company. Nobody wants to, especially buy a company that's
at a big multiple.
at a big multiple at least.
I'll buy it at the one.
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on how you want to exit. But you know, if we want to exit well, which is always the goal, we want to do it as quickly as possible, and we want to get the highest multiple that we can, with as few attorney fees and all the other fees that are associated with it. So, trying to get year over year increase in financials, in the health of the company. That shows a lot of excitement to the buyer, shows them opportunity. So that's something that we push for a lot. We've touched on it before, Greg, but the relationships. We cannot sell with personal relationships. We can, it's very difficult. There's going to be earnouts, there's going to be a lot of stipulations and contingencies that nobody's comfortable with. And I mean, depending on how you want to exit, there's very easy ways to reduce that for any business owner. Any business owner. And when you're in the business, when you're caught up in the business, it's hard to see that. It takes a third-party perspective to see that and understand that further to implement it.
It's a little bit of pride. I mean, I've known Jimmy for 30 years. No one takes care of him like me.
Yeah.
But they can.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, your GM can take good care of Jimmy.
Yeah. And if not, then you failed your GM. You haven't trained your GM properly.
That's exactly right. So a part of implementing the system is implementing the system of training yourself and being a good leader, right? There's a lot that goes into this. It's not just, it's not just hiring somebody. It's actually becoming a leader, stepping out of a managerial position and becoming a leader in the company. That and just cleaning up any loose ends. It's all quite simple. It really is simple.
Simple's not easy.
It's simple when you take a different perspective. When you're in the company, it's not simple. When I sold my first company, it wasn't simple. There's so much I did not understand, but going through the selling process, I learned so much. I learned so much about developing a company and building a self-sustainable company. That I think that's what allowed me to take a different perspective on this.
Okay, Nathan, so let's talk about Graystone International. I mean, you represent buyers, you represent sellers. When someone comes to you, either a buyer or a seller, you talked about having your team that supports them.
Yep.
What is that team?
Yeah, so one thing that's kind of unique about Graystone is we actually have an in-house marketing team. We call it an in-house marketing team, but it's really our corporate support. So from a marketing director to broker assistants to creative directors, sales directors, I mean, all of that, there's a lot of support on the back end to allow us to confidentially market a company. So another unique approach that we have is you don't hire a broker at Graystone. Typically there's a lead on your deal, but you get the entire team. So I'm involved on every deal. Even though if I'm not the lead, I still know the client. And I talk to every one of our clients, and our clients get the entire team. So we have multiple attorneys that are brokers with us. We have multiple CPAs and really intelligent people within our firm. You get all of them. You get the entire team, including myself. And so the marketing team, you get all of us. So that's something that's unique at Graystone is the team approach that our clients get.
I think that is unique because having those expertise in-house, you can address any issues and correct them, or you can provide proper disclosure up front so that it doesn't become an issue down the road. Because if you walk through a deal and then outside attorneys get involved, and then it's a kind of like a gotcha.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, there goes a $500,000.
Well, exactly. And that's a big misconception of brokers, and maybe rightfully so to a certain extent, that we're marketing agents, right? We market something for sale and then we step out. That's not the way we operate. The marketing, confidential marketing of our listings is maybe 10% of the process. It is understanding and positioning the rest of the process appropriately to make sure our clients win.
Okay, I'm going to end with this last question. I know this is probably going to be the hardest question we've talked about all day, but if you were going to advise a seller, and let's say that they've got 3 years to kind of work through and prepare themselves, what's one bit of advice that you would tell them?
Oh gosh, you always ask the hard questions last. There's a lot that I could share on this. I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I could give is to build out, early on, build out a solid deal team, an advisory group. So typically that's going to be your attorney, your business attorney. It's going to be your CPA, and even a broker, bringing them in early. And working and allowing all of them to build a kumbaya or build some synergy and understand how, what your goals and expectations are.
That's huge.
It's huge. And then allowing the team to work together frequently to move your business towards properly exiting. People that plan ahead do well. When they exit quickly, they do it effectively, they get higher valuations. Everything is ready. Things, time kills deals all the time. And having, a good team around you that can allow you to move quickly is probably the best thing you could put in place. So that would be my one piece of advice.
Build a team.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs that probably speaks their language, because a lot of entrepreneurs that are successful, that are growing businesses, realize that they can't do it themselves. They have to build an operational team. It's maybe building a little bit team with a little bit different focus.
Yeah, and we talk about this too. Entrepreneurship's a lonely road. Having those advisors around you, it makes that whole process, that whole trip of entrepreneurship a little easier to travel.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for taking time to share your wisdom and your value with us and with the audience. We really appreciate the open-handedness and the honesty that you've kind of given. So last question, I guess this is the last question. How can entrepreneurs get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn is probably best. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I love meeting entrepreneurs and business owners. So I love connecting with them and going to grabbing coffee or dinner and just getting to hear their story. I never take an approach of soliciting business. I love building relationships with entrepreneurs. So I would invite anybody to join me on LinkedIn and create some dialogue and see if I can assist them in any way, even if it's not selling a business.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If y'all aren't connected with Nathan and Graystone International on LinkedIn, definitely do that. Thank you so much for spending time with us and learning and being part of today's conversation. And we look forward to continue the conversation where we're talking about supporting you, the entrepreneur that's looking to sell their business and looking at it from a holistic approach. Thanks so much for joining us.
Talk about working with a guy that knows exactly what you're going through when you, as the entrepreneur, are looking to exit your business. I really continue to be impressed with the passion that Nathan has towards the mergers and acquisitions process, as well as the guidance and the open-handedness with which he tries to support the entrepreneurs that he works with. The three biggest things that I took away from my discussion with Nathan was, one, you need to understand the buyer because they are going to drive so much of the process. Understanding what their objectives are, understanding how they're looking at the company, understanding how they're valuing the company is super, super critical. Two, you can deal with risk and you can walk through and mitigate risk as long as you have enough time in order to deal with it. Now remember, the risk in your business that your business presents to not you, the seller, but to the buyer greatly impacts the amount of cash that the buyer is willing to give you or the structure in which that cash is going to get handed over to you. So understanding those risks from the buyer's perspective and then putting systems in place in order to lower that risk allows you to achieve more of your goal and probably allows you to get more of the cash sooner. And the third and final thing that really struck me through the conversation with Nathan was that you're gonna cry. And that just seems to make sense. You have spent the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years building your business and investing your blood, sweat, and tears into the business. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you know what it's like to have periods of extreme highs and extreme lows. And when you're looking to say, okay, I'm no longer part of that business, I'm going to leave that business behind, it's going to be emotional. And so you just need to be prepared of it, but have the end in mind. Always have the end in mind. Be able to sit there and look and understand and know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and don't forget that. Well, that's going to do it for this week. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I have. If you're not connected with Nathan on LinkedIn, please make sure that you do that. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you and learn how I can encourage and support you. Thanks again for spending time and watching this episode. I hope that you join us next week when we're going to be talking with Jimmy Dudham and Travis Tatum about what it's like in order to sell the business to someone that's within your own family, and to be able to do it in such a way that Thanksgiving dinners are not uncomfortable and that Christmas is actually spent as a family. So I encourage you to mark your calendar for next week. And if you're not receiving the weekly emails where I deliver each episode directly to your inbox, please let me know and I'd be more than happy to put you on the email list. Until next week, this is Greg Martin, the Entrepreneur's Banker. Thank you and have a wonderful week.